Consumer expectations have never been higher. But with the evolving economic and competitive pressures, it's getting harder for brands to deliver the kind of consistent, compelling experiences that keep customers loyal. Can operations and facilities leaders find ways to meet these demands while growing their footprint and ultimately drive revenue? Let's find out. Welcome to Elevating Brick and Mortar, a show that discusses the crucial role that facilities, construction, and operations play in designing and delivering a compelling customer experience. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 5 of Elevating Brick and Mortar. Thank you for joining us. I'm here today with Aaron Salow, CEO and founder of XOi Technologies. Aaron, welcome.
Sid, thank you for having me. Excited about the conversation.
Love it. Thank you for joining me. So, Aaron, before we dive into your journey, could you share a little bit about XOi?
Happy to. So XOi was founded with a very explicit mission that we still hold today, which is delivering solutions for frontline workers, whether that's a technician, which is where we started and focused on, or a salesperson on the job site across mechanical, electrical, plumbing, commercial, kitchen.
Okay, I want to dive more into XOi, but let's talk about your journey, right? Let's go back to the beginning. What led you to start XOi? What was the market gap, and what did you see and that inspired you to do this?
You know, it goes way back, and I promise not to wax too eloquent about my full youth, but growing up, being born and raised in Michigan, very blue collar upbringing. Very much on my grandparents' farm. My dad's in manufacturing, and so I talk about that foundationally because it really built a lot of who I am and who I think is important to serve well, and how I view blue collar jobs, which is with the utmost respect. Everyone I knew and loved growing up worked with their hands. And so I looked at that professional pride as a young age and went, oh, this is good work. This back-breaking hands-on work is good work. And it's not that I didn't realize that accountants and lawyers and people existed, but I built a foundation early that those are respectable, good jobs that you should be proud of. And so I kind of took that into life and realized a lot of my kind of generation I guess I'm a geriatric millennial, Sid. That's what's I'm right on that edge. But we're told the same thing. They're really taught that, hey, you know, you're kind of a loser if you don't go to college. That's kind of the marker of somebody who's successful to get a degree. And college is great and schooling's great, and it's not for everyone. And it's turned into a really expensive thing that a lot of times doesn't result in or doesn't occur great results, you know? And so as I got into my career, I worked in manufacturing, construction. I realized that kind of generational shift and kind of perspective was really impacting the industry in a meaningful way. And it wasn't good. I was working for a modular construction business, designing and selling clean rooms, and realized finding people to install these rooms, finding the right talent from a contractor, subcontractor perspective was really hard. And it was like, man, the skilled trades gap that we're hearing about is a real thing. And right along that side, that moment, kind of Google Glass and all the wearables were really coming to the surface. And I thought to myself, gosh, there's got to be a way to connect what a guy's struggling with on a job site with an expert in a hands-free way. This will be great. And young, dumb, and naive enough to go, I can start a company. It'll be great. Which you have to be an entrepreneur. A little bit of that naive kind of I can conquer the world mentality. And so that impetus of smart glasses, kind of seeing my own experience and realizing this was a cultural generational problem and seeing it in real life business, the impact that it had was the impetus to say, how do we connect expertise to a job site? And although we haven't sold a pair of smart glasses in a long time, that experience forced us to really look at a lot of job sites and spend a lot of time on job sites and realize, wow, this is the product. This is what this industry sells. It's happening here. Men and women on the job site selling, installing, servicing. And it was largely untapped. It was largely underserved. And we frankly treated blue collar people the same way we did culturally from college is the only thing that makes you relevant. And that the software industry was like, hey, we're going to solve the business problem. And the men and women that do these jobs on site, good luck. You know, we're not going to do a lot technologically for them, which is wild when you think about the product of the industry is efficient uptime. It's an asset running well. And so, that was kind of the genesis of our company, of my story. I believe these people deserve fantastic solutions. I think they're the most underserved group of folks that need companies that think about them all the time, and it continues to drive us in the ethos of this business. Over 10 years later.
To your point, some of that narrative around the only way to be successful is going to and doing a 4-year degree in a college kind of starting to like hurt us now and hurt us in a big way. Did you always grow up thinking that you're going to start a company, or was there that pivotal moment when you were like, no, I see a problem, I can do this, I can start a company and be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur?
Yeah, so my dad was an entrepreneur at a young
Hmm.
age, and I got to experience in manufacturing. I got to experience what that was like, and it was it, a lot of it was terrifying to watch. I think it was actually really healthy because I remember explicitly, and no exaggeration, my dad had an issue. He was working through a customer challenge. He didn't sleep. He worked for 3 days straight. And this isn't like a, old wives' tale where it gets longer and longer. I remember him coming home, and my dad's a, 6'4", 280, arms as thick as tree trunks kind of guy that I didn't see cry. And I just saw a man that was completely depleted, right, in tears. Like it taught me an important lesson about what entrepreneurship takes, and also the implications of trying to be a superhero when you really need to find great people and put it around you. And so, almost in a cocky way, when I started the business, like, oh, I know what entrepreneurship takes. I saw it, and I would say I had a pretty good perspective, and that's one of many stories of the sacrifice it takes. And yet, still, man, I was an idiot. There was so much I learned over the last, and to continue to learn about how hard it is. It's unbelievable levels of sacrifice, discipline, resilience, no, taking no often, especially early, to get there. But I think that spark, to answer your question, was always interesting to me because I also went from a place as a kid where we couldn't afford a fridge and we put our food outside in the winter in Michigan. That level of government subsidized homes, food stamps, to watching entrepreneurship, my dad fight through this for a long time and get to a place where I remember when I was 16, he bought a Corvette. He would say today, that's a dumb purchase. Don't buy a dumb car like that. But I remember as a 16-year-old, I went, we used to put our food outside. We lived in
Yeah.
government subsidized, like entrepreneurship
That's
can
right.
give you this
That's right.
opportunity to establish yourself. And it was really inspiring, and so I'd say that was the impetus of like, you can control your own destiny.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably hard, but it's possible. And so I think that was the spark for me as an entrepreneur.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Um, as you look back and you look at what XOI is today, did you start with the same mission and North Star that you have today? And what was it then? And
Mhm.
how has it evolved over time?
Yeah, our mission statement from day one was solving the skilled trades gap. That was the impetus for glasses and live video support and job site. And although our mission continues to expand and evolve, just this morning in an ELT meeting, we're talking all about the job site, the skilled trades gap, empowering technicians, what that sales persona looks like in context of that, all the stakeholders around the job site. And so if you kind of think of the two big value streams that XOI provides, it's operational and technician efficiency, which really drives the entire ecosystem on a job site, allows you to get more out of every technician, bring in technicians and get them up to speed and revenue producing faster. But it's also the sales side. It's the ability to be able to identify opportunities, capital planning, ESG, all these type of things, but it's all wrapped around the job site. And so even though that skilled trades continues to be a core part of it, it's that focus on that very important part of the journey is impacting everything globally, from OEMs to distributors to FSPs to asset owners. So when you start to think of it in context of that, you go, oh, all these stakeholders really just care about the job site. How do we the connective tissue here that ultimately solves the skilled trades gap, but also allows us to evolve the solutions for those various stakeholders as well?
So your customer is the service provider, the contractor, the business owner, right? Um, Help us understand, like, what does XOI actually help them do better? And then there's the
Yeah.
owner operator, and then there's the techs in the field. What do they benefit from if they were to use XOI?
Yeah, so if you think about, you start with kind of facts, which today a technician on any given job site, and our focus is largely commercial, uh, will use 9 to 10 different applications while they're on a job site only. Why? Because they're getting pulled in all sorts of different directions. You have to do pre-test safety planning. If you want to do field quoting, it's like this. You have to document the work in a specific way. This customer wants asset data and some sort of report in a special PDF. And so when you think about all the different things pulling a technician, it's actually from the stakeholders I mentioned. That OEM that you need that installation or warranty origination information from, well, they've got 12 apps in the App Store that you can use. And the distributor to get that part, they've got a half a dozen apps that you can interface with. Plus, your company has put all the toys and bells and whistles on your path for you to get pulled in other directions. And technicians didn't take the job they took to use technology. I always tell my product engineering teams, if you can solve technician happiness and usage, it's one of the hardest personas on the planet because they didn't go, hey, I took this job because I love technology. They said, I want to be the CEO of my own van world geography. I want to do my thing. I want to fix things. I want technology to let me not do the BS I don't want to do. And so when you ask about kind of where XOI's value is, it's consolidating that experience into a single pane of glass to be able to have a consistent deliverable by connecting. Oh, you're looking for installation procedure from an OEM? That's been delivered in context of what you're doing in your job. You're not searching. We already know which asset you're on because we leverage OCR to take a picture of a data plate. Pre-test safety planning's in there. Field quoting, quick reminder. We already have this information. Just give me a quick video for the sales guy. Oh, you need support? We can connect you to an expert. We'll walk you through with AI and how to fix it. There's so many opportunities to consolidate that. And in virtue of doing that for our field service providers, we're building structured data on their behalf to leverage all this cool stuff that you see out in the marketplace around artificial intelligence because we've consolidated the data set, created a clean taxonomy, and now technicians have a better experience. They're more effective and efficient, more jobs per tech per month, which leads to opportunities for the sales team to have higher fidelity data, to be able to leverage that data to sell more to their customers, better performance contracting, et cetera. So when you think about XOI's impact, it really is about consolidating that job site experience, making that user experience really clean and simple, and then building structured data for an organization that impacts every asset of what they do by creating really clean interfaces and experiences for them.
So it sounds like that's great. So it sounds like, you know, because they have XOI, they can deliver better service, they can be more
Yep.
efficient.
Yep.
It sounds like they'll be more competitive, right? Because if they do a great job, they're going to stand out from the crowd. And because they now are more efficient, they can grow their business. What does your customer's customer benefit from? You know, how do they recognize that there's a provider that uses XOI and one that doesn't? And you know, should they care?
Yes, yes. It's a huge piece of our story. And so, one of the more consistent things we saw in the early days, kind of harkening back to the start of the business, spending those tens of thousands of hours on job sites with techs, is the end customer. It's inherently mysterious what any given trade does. They know they're paying something, they'd see a bill they're going to complain about. There's some sort of D&E they have, or they have to get approval from their boss who's in a different city. And so, the transparency of what a technician is doing on a job site, it was an obvious challenge. And so when it comes to building trust with the customer, justifying change orders, requests, et cetera, in ways that are easy to share, that are consistent, that have full history, if you think about the fact that you have a single human a lot of times on a job site on a roof, the customer's not with them. They're not on the roof with them. They're by themselves. So they have all these competing priorities for their attention. And then the customer is just getting a big bill with a set of notes that says, I came and fixed it. Versus with XOI, with delivering visibility, delivering data and intelligence. Now the customer experience is Here's what the job site looked like when I arrived. Here's what we thought the problem was. It actually was this. We solved it. Here's your unit working effectively, a clean work site. And here's some really interesting information about this asset you should consider. It's 13 years old. There's a new service bulletin on it. I'd recommend to get in front of replacing a condensing coil. In fact, here's a leaking condensing unit. Here is a leak detection system sounding like a bad EDM song. If you need to share this with your CFO to get justification, here you go. And so that's an example of changing that customer experience. And as a virtue of doing that in every job site, you're also building a much more structured data set around the asset, which then starts to get to what do my consumables purchasing look like? Am I getting the right filters and belts? How should I think about capital planning next year? Do I actually have a good understanding of where I need to invest these dollars to stay up? And so across hospitals and data centers and retail, those are really important things. And so it all starts to build into really providing FSPs the ability to serve in a way they've never been able to before, Sid. That's what's exciting too. Asset owners have been used to having to go to ESCOs, consultants, running these really expensive analysis when, great companies can leverage this information, work with great CMMS, EAM providers, and give that customer that experience.
A great tech, is worth their weight in gold, right? I mean, they can, help make your business or break your business. And, they're folks that ultimately are the ones turning the wrench. They're climbing roofs. They're out there in the heat. They're getting the job done. And in the midst of all that, they have to do all this stuff on their phones and follow protocol and click buttons, right? How do you get that persona to say, no, if I do this, I become a better tech? How do you get their buy-in, and how do you, make them your champion? Because I'm sure over the years, you've spent a lot of time with techs in the field across different trades, and there's different challenges to each type of trade and the work environment and what they're doing and what the job site, like you said.
Yeah, it's interesting. Today's world too with AI, I think we talked about underserved. I think right now in some use cases and ways, technicians are being overserved. So meaning, hey, you should start talking to this thing all the time because it's your job to talk to it no matter what. And this is how you teach the AI to eventually take your job, which is how they translate what you're telling them to do. And so we can talk about AI, but there's two really core lessons that we've learned around technician. What's in it for me? Number one is continuous versus episodic use cases. It's shocking to me how often software providers today are still delivering episodic use cases that in some cases require several decisions or stage gates to even get to using the technology, which is part of the reason we have these 9 or 10 apps that a technician has to use. Those are ripe for non-use, bad adoption, tough change management. When I have to go, all right, well, I've got, let's say, a parts, locator, or I've got some sort of diagnostic tool. If that is not connected to my everyday experience and that is that is connecting with me as a whisper, hey, I've got this availability, do you need support, et cetera, which is how I think AI should be built as well. I have to remember to go, what was that thing my company gave me where I look a thing up? And I kind of like going to the parts house because I get air conditioning. I get to talk about the game. I get free donuts and coffee. Like there's a human psychology to that versus continuous use cases where I use this on every job because I don't like typing in 29 character alphanumeric serial numbers. I don't like the he said, she said game when I leave a site and a customer calls the office and says something wasn't done. Which takes me to the next point, which is what's in it for the technician and how do they view something differently than a different stakeholder in their own business? So we talked about customer experience and validation, et cetera. When we go train a group of technicians, we go, raise your hand if you've ever had a situation where a customer called after you left and they were like, he left it dirty and he did and she did and every hand goes up if they've been being attacked. There's no way to validate. They're by themselves in a mechanical room. They're by themselves and on a rooftop. And so the ability to go, hey, this is a great customer experience, but also this is to cover your butt. You get to validate what's being done. Our customers have saved themselves from tens of millions of dollars of litigation because they simply put processes in place to document what they've done. especially in the Northeast, as you might imagine. A little more litigious area of the country, people get named as part of lawsuits and building projects, and they go, here's what I did here. I'm going to validate this. Driving that consistency is really important. And technicians care more about what their customers think than their boss tells them what the boss tells them to do. So if they've got a customer that's like, hey man, thanks for doing that. That really helped me justify this change order or get approval on this, or really builds trust when you share this with me. That is much more encouraging to attack than their boss going, we got some new tech, use it. Why aren't you using it? Use the technology, right? That's like, okay, it's just noise. And so I would say it's kind of one and two, A and B of what we learned on kind of at a high level, continuous versus episodic. What's in it for the technician? You have to keep them in mind first, and then knowing where their incentive base is and what they're motivated by,
Hmm,
which is customer feedback, getting that professional pride. That's something I learned early on. A great hands-on blue collar person has a lot of professional pride. You
for
know,
sure.
and because I grew up that way, my wife teases me all the time. I'll be sitting in a coffee shop and I'm like, look at that electrical conduit. Look at how nicely that shapes. She's like,
That's
you're a
right.
big dork. I'm like, that's craft, you
That's
know?
right.
That's awesome. And because I know what that takes. I've tried to do it myself and I've looked at it and went, ooh, Aaron, you need some help on the bend and pipe, right? And so anyway, those are the kind of things. And so they love that. It's motivating, and they
Yeah,
should, because when you do great work, it's something you can stand back and be proud of.
100%. So help us understand how XOI sits, in comparison to an FSM tool, like a field service
Yeah.
management tool, or
Yeah.
a operating platform that a company chooses to run their business.
No, we have a lot of partners we've integrated with in the FSM ERP side. For us, again, it kind of focused very much on the job site and the stakeholders that care about what's happening there, which is every stakeholder in our market. If you think about that, kind of what are we selling, efficient uptime? OEMs want to know what's going on because their product and reputation is on the line, and they want to be first in position to get that replacement work. Distributors would love to know that as well because they want to be first in line for that attention to sell you parts experience. The FSP obviously wants to deliver best in class experiences, and the asset owner very much cares about the job site. They don't so much care about, like, how did you get routing and dispatch here? And what's your inventory look like? Are you here with the best possible tech that's ready to work on this equipment to keep me up? And so when you think about that, it's a big, big opportunity when it comes to the field service ecosystem and the technician journey. So we don't have interest in the FSM space. We highly respect all those things are necessary, but we say, hey, we can partner with you to provide best in class experiences and connect the ecosystem in meaningful ways that'll make you more efficient, more money, better margins, because we're connecting this 9, 10, 11, 12. One of my customers, when they met us, had 31 apps on their phone for a technician when they got hired. It's like, hey, you're never going to have consistent experience. Your technicians are pissed. And if you ever want to do anything with AI, you're not going to have a good structured data set because it's not democratized. It's everywhere, right? It's a silo. So
Yeah,
yeah, we very much focus there and partner with those companies.
that's great. So you also recently had a major investment from KKR and acquired Specifics as part of that deal. What, first of all, congratulations. So what does that enable XY to do now
Yeah.
that maybe wasn't possible before?
So when I think about that job site in that very critical moment, there's three components: technician, a human, technician or salesperson, a frontline worker. There's an environment you're assessing. What's the application of that unit? What part of the country, what environmental parallels may exist and how that performs. And then it's the asset itself. And so you mentioned earlier, like finding the best techs, et cetera. We don't know as an industry what 20 years means. I can't tell you how many customers have been like, I got a 20-year guy. I don't know what he did for 20 years, but he stinks. And then you meet a 7-year person, they're like, whoever trained him is a master of this stuff because this guy or gal is amazing. And so when we talk about exposing those three things and really how that feeds the entire product, uptime, efficient uptime kind of product that the industry sells, understanding each of those components in detail is critical. Specifics has an awesome origin story in which came out of HVAC, came out of, some of the REITs that exist out there and said, gosh, there is specification data, or said differently, birth certificate data on equipment when it comes out of the factory that's really important to understand, that's really hard to get access to because it's super complex configurations. And if you have this type of power supply and the controls change like this, which also change the condensing unit. And so there's all these tangled web of information. They said, hey, we're going to go about making every piece of commercial HVAC, furnaces, now commercial kitchen, we're really accelerating the equipment types we can do, where we have the ability to say, with a simple make model serial number, we can surface 80 to 120 data points about that piece of equipment in a millisecond. And when you combine that with XOi's performance data, which is symptom issue resolution data. So what was the issue with the unit? We talked about workflows earlier. What was the real problem? How did we solve it? You start to get a really rich data set on the asset. You also get really interesting perspective on what a 10-year guy, a 20-year guy, a 3-year guy with what experience and what equipment history does when he's faced with problems on those types of units. And then, of course, location data, weather data, IoT sensors, environmental, right, gives you that kind of full picture. And so it made a lot of sense with specifics to go, gosh, this is amazing birth certificate data that allows us to know age and refrigerant controls, all this relevant data. When combined with our performance data, you start to get a really interesting proprietary data set that unlocks all sorts of applications. And
That's great.
so really excited to bring the specifics guy on board. Even more so the talent on that team. It was a smaller company. I mean, the technology and the data was huge, but those guys are just awesome. And we're
Love it.
really happy to have them on the team. Yeah.
That's great. So let's talk about assets, right? I mean,
Yeah.
assets and the data around it and the management of assets remain one of those really hairy problems in the space. Often ignored, underinvested in, and sometimes hard to show an ROI on.
Mhm.
What's your perspective on why that's been the case?
It starts with the technician. It starts with the fact that we have, and it starts with the fact that we have software where this is very disconnected and siloed across any given business to the point where we don't even have good asset data on any given job site to start with. So as an example, one of our largest customers, when they came to us years ago, they do a few $1 billion in service business across North America. They had 8% asset registration, meaning 8% of the units they worked on to create that billions of dollars of revenue every year, they had quality make, model, serial number information. It's just pretty wild.
Wow.
When you think about the product is
Right.
uptime, we should know what make, model, serial number we have. Why? And when I say it
Versus
starts with the
HVAC
technician,
one, right?
RTU1.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And what does that mean? And so the ability for us to say, hey, we're gonna map your asset universe, so we understand that registration now is in the high 90s. And you're always going to have that, oh, I replaced something, et cetera, but much different landscape. So you map your asset universe, you add in specification data. Now I know full age, refrigeration, reclamation with all the A2L changes that have come down the pike. I have full understanding of that. I know power supply, which also is really interesting because if I take kilowatt per hour in any given geography, I start to get, and I take that with runtime, I start to get a sense of energy modeling, and so it's like, what does that look like? So all of this is foundational, but I got to start by getting the assets. And then I got to analyze those assets. And then I got to have a tool which allows me to make actionable decisions around those assets. And so why didn't we have that as an industry? And why is that such a challenge? Because you're asking a guy or gal on the sixth job of the day to type in a 29 character alphanumeric serial number correctly into a field service management solution. And we talked about underserved. I didn't do it. I typed it in wrong, etc. This is a huge company with a lot of really smart people in it, but it comes down to a single breaking point, which is I'm expecting a human to type this in on a job site, and it just doesn't happen 92% of the time,
Right.
you know? And so we gave them a great OCR tool, which now runs on device, is super accurate, which built the foundation to do all the rest of those higher order applications. And so that's the first problem we have to solve as an industry. Make sure the assets are correct,
Yeah.
accurate, updated, and give technicians, salespeople, facilities managers tools that make that so simple and easy and build confidence and trust that they can go do the rest of that with their business.
Yeah. I mean, there's been huge advanced advancements in tech for sure that reduces friction. What you're doing at XOI is one of those ways in which you're able to support your end user to go and get the information that their customers are looking for. Removing the friction is a big part of the success here, I think, in the advancements in tech. But what do you think about the customer's customer, right? Your
Mhm.
customer's customer is the multi-site retailer or business that
Yeah.
the technicians on site and trying to fix something for.
Yeah.
Have their expectations changed over the past few years? Tell me about that.
Yeah, no question. So if that large field service provider I mentioned only had 8% asset registration, you imagine that customer, those customers largely didn't have it either. You would say, well, of course they do. They must. That they have, these platforms, et cetera, but they're faced with the same challenges. They changed contractors 6 times over the last 5 years. They've changed software that's managing their business. They went outsourced and they went insourced, right? And so that breakage over time creates the same problem for the end customer in which they don't have that information. And so today, in a world in which ESG, electrification, green initiatives, in cases where the market's looking more volatile and they're trying to tighten and make the best decisions about replacements, the best decisions about the effectiveness of their FSPs, because they're thinking about costs. Again, that's kind of the core. And so I need to know what the asset is. I need to know how it performs at a really confident level. And I need to know that I have a contractor that's doing effective work and keeping me up to speed on these decisions I have to make on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis for my business. HVAC is where we started because it's 40 to 50% of every commercial building's energy spend and capital expenditure, right? That and lights make up a huge percentage. Unless you're in industrial and there's more complex machinery, et cetera. Commercial kitchen's not far behind that, depending on what you have there, right? In terms of refrigeration, racking, et cetera. And there's just very little information about what that looks like globally and what they should expect in terms of service, replacements, meeting standards, energy, et cetera. So very similar problems, and that's how it served it.
For sure. I mean, it's a fascinating time because if you look at consumers, employees, people that are
Mhm.
walking into these built environments, I think overall our expectations have significantly gone up. Like we expect
Mhm.
to be comfortable. We expect that the spaces we walk into are warm and welcoming, are kept up to the standards of the brand or the company or the organization that we are either walking into or are going in there to shop or have a great meal, whatever that may be. And so the businesses have to really adapt to increase the level of service that they're able to offer their consumers, and the expectations of their own teams managing those spaces has gone up. And of course, who do they rely on to actually turn the wrench? It's the tech in the field. It's the owner operator of the business, the service provider partner that they've engaged with. So this downstream effect of just higher expectations is phenomenal. And the only way that I think this works is leveraging technology and keeping up with the pace. You can't do things the way you did it 5 years ago. You can't do things the way you did it 1 year ago, right? I mean, if you're not doing it, somebody else is, and is able to offer a better service, is able to get there faster, is able to offer a better experience, all while keeping their costs more competitive, not cheap, competitive, doing it the right way, and offering value, which ultimately means that the built environment represents the brand in the best possible way, and your consumers and employees are happy, right? And that is a very, very beautiful thing to watch, because the tech companies are realizing that they have to do a lot more to deliver on their promise, and so they're pushing
Mhm.
themselves to actually do more, create more value, and I think the tech today is supporting that, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest trends we've seen with end customers, with asset owners, is I need this building to be at 69 degrees and 22% humidity, or 20 to 30%, whatever the case may be. You do whatever you want to the equipment to ensure that that's the case. It's your responsibility. Otherwise said, in some ways that's been expressed over the years as full performance contracts. The thing about contractor, if you think, well, kind of sticking with the asset owner, if you think about it, like they've gone along with this quarterly maintenance thing and tasking, and it's really the same business model that's been in place for 40 years. We're going to come out once a quarter. We're going to do it as cheap as possible so that we can earn that break fix business, because that's where all the margin is for an FSP, because that's where they make all their money. When really what an asset owner wants is they just want uptime and consistency. You do what you need to do quarterly, weekly, yearly, you manage it. The implications of that have been tough for the FSP because they don't have good enough data to have confidence that they're quoting something that makes sense. So if you talk to an FSP that's done this at any level, they lose their butt one year, they make a ton of profit the next year because nothing, right? And so it's like these really lumpy business models. It creates attrition and churn within those, in the context of that. And so I think that the desire for customers to say, I want someone who's leveraging the technology and the insights to be predictive, proactive, and I'm paying for an experience set in a certain way, whether that experience is a restaurant that maintains this, whether it's a data center, which is a really critical environment, um, hospital where lives are on the line. It's much different than, hey, we'll do a quarterly maintenance and you call us if there's a problem. Hopefully we're available, type of thing. So it's really disrupting the business model, and the people that are leaning into it are winning.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about AI, right? It's everywhere. It's here. Huge advancements. AI has been around for a long, long time. I mean, if you
Right.
played Atari, like, you were playing against a computer, that was AI, right? It's more ubiquitous now. It's more easily accessible now. There's huge advancements in technology, but companies are barely scratching the surface. And unfortunately, you see companies that just kind of throw the AI, two letters in their brand, in their marketing.
Yep.
But AI is a tool to solve real problems, to solve
Hmm.
customer needs.
Right.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you're seeing out there in terms of the impact of AI on the space, and would love to hear your thoughts on how you're thinking about AI at XOi.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, since you mentioned Atari, I've dusted off the Nintendo Classic recently, Sid, and I
Okay.
just I just won the Super Bowl in Tecmo with the Los Angeles Raiders.
Oh wow,
My
there you
7
go.
and 4-year-old sons were pretty excited to watch that, and I beat the AI. I beat one of the original AIs in your context. Little
Try that
Tecmo Bowl
today,
call
right?
out. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Don't put me on any modern system. I'm not a gamer, but that was fun to relive that. If you think about AI as a child, a growing preteen, an adult, wherever it is in the chain, it has to be taught, just like a human would be taught. And that starts with taking tribal in our industry, in blue collar industries, taking tribal tacit knowledge that largely hasn't been centralized in any one place. In fact, it's in multiple different stakeholder software. It's disconnected in the most meaningful way you could imagine, and being able to teach artificial intelligence to understand that nuance and have that perspective, especially when you're dealing with mission critical, really expensive equipment, diagnostics, et cetera. So I'm talking about kind of the market experience first. And so we've taken a really pragmatic approach to say, how are we delivering solutions in AI that are trust building? Number one, we talk about trust always, that are taking work off a technician or frontline worker's plate that they don't want to do anyway. The first thing my team released, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, was AI summaries. The technicians are doing workflows in XOI throughout the field. They're accomplishing that single pane of glass. AI is writing phenomenal notes for them that are spelling and grammar correct and bulleted, et cetera.
That's
These
right.
things we've all seen with ChatGPT. It's phenomenally obvious that that saves 15 minutes on a job site. And there's like 1% of technicians that really love it. There's those guys out there that are verbose and they'll write you a novel every time. But customers demand some level of visibility of what they just paid for.
That's
They're
right.
not going to pay the invoice, $12,000 invoice for I came and fixed it. And anyone who's worked in this industry has seen knows, no, I came and you're like, buddy, I came and fixed it. What did you
What
do?
else do you want? Yeah.
Video, the notes, et cetera. And so it's been fantastic to see that because it's built a lot of trust. It's a
That's
heavily
right.
used thing. It takes crap off their plate. The next thing we released was Modern Service Sticker, which, anyone that's been in the trades for a long time, guys would put post-it notes or put a piece of, tape across the inside of an electrical box and say, Bob was here and this is what I did to the unit as like a service sticker.
Yeah.
We've evaluated all these workflows and we're telling technicians, hey, this serial number, this is the really quick history on what's happened here. Last October, replace a condenser, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because what is that today? I got to call Bob. Bob's on another job. Bob's on vacation. What did he do to this unit? I don't have, all I have is I came in and fixed it as notes. Here are the issue IDs for these things. Here's what this looks like across your entire business, across North America. And so again, it's stuff that's busy work they don't enjoy, that's really simplifying, creating more efficient experiences. So in terms of AI, it's the biggest technological shift of our lifetimes. There's no question it's moving even faster than the internet, mobile, the things that we've seen. And I think it will fundamentally change how we do everything. And if we over index or overserve, like we said earlier, to a point where we're telling the average age of a tech is 44 years old still in this country. It's come down, but it's 44. A 44-year-old is, I'm 42, so I'm right there. But, yeah, we know technology. We kind of grew up with this type of thing. And if you give me something that hallucinates, I can't trust, I'm never going to use it again. You will fulfill my negative fantasy about the government watching me or whatever. And you go, see,
That's right.
and so the idea that we would overserve or just do it because it's possible, I think is a big mistake. And so it should really be a whisper in context of frontline workers' natural work. Hey, have you considered this? I'm here to help if you need me. It should be a natural interaction. I think the other thing that's really shifted for us is the internal use of it.
Yeah.
One of our best engineers, he said something really interesting. He said, Anthropic said like 6 months ago, we won't need senior software engineers by summer 2026. And this guy's brilliant and also a pessimist, as a lot of engineers are. He's like, yeah, okay, sure thing. He goes, 6 months ago, I was dismissive. 3 months ago, I was like, it's moving pretty quick. Today, and this was last week, he goes, it could be possible. And this is a guy that now he goes, 100% no, 80, probably. I mean, that fundamentally changes everything in terms of innovation, what you can build, how fast you can build it. And so it was, coming from him, that it meant a lot to me because I know he views the world through that real lens of like, let's see. So I think it's fundamentally shifting how we think about innovation, how fast we're moving, the implications of POCs, vetting the customer, being able to go, oh, that's not working. Let's make it again. It's dramatic, Sid. Like it's unbelievably dramatic. You're going to see software businesses, the businesses as a whole that are building massive companies at much smaller company sizes. And I think that's the thing that's been most impactful to me is the internal efficiencies, and it's across every part of the business, marketing, sales, et cetera. But it's that same balance. You could be so bleeding edge that you push it too far, it's not ready. And everyone kind of goes, it's not going to work, or it's whatever. But if you're sitting on a rocking chair like an old man going, this is you're gonna get smoked.
That's right.
Smoked.
That's right.
So
hit you
there's
like a freight
balance.
train. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no question. It's disrupting everything.
It's
So
one of the
I think
most
it's a balanced
exciting
approach.
things. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
It's one of the most exciting things right now. I think in our lifetimes, right? If you think about the monumental shift in terms of how we think about our everyday lives, how we just use, ChatGPT for things that we do every day. Not just at work, but in your own personal lives, like access to information. I think it has democratized access to AI, which I think is huge. And the ones that are kind of putting their head in the sand and thinking, it's just a fad, I think are going to be really surprised in a week, if not sooner, right?
That's how fast it seems to be happening, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about just broadly any macro trends that you're looking at beyond, and of course, not including AI. We just talked about that you have your eyes on and you think will change the way facilities is done or the trades are done. Anything else that's exciting and you have your eye on?
We hit a lot of the regulatory things that are happening, in the market, which I think are forcing a lot of companies to look differently at their assets, how they perform, who they're using to service their assets, what the effectiveness and efficiency of those service iterations look like. So I think that's a big one. I think alongside of that, you're seeing a consolidation happening like no other time in history in terms of private equity's interest in this and the consolidation of field service providers. And I think it's coming at an interesting time where technology is really reaching an apex of it actually being the difference maker. Because if you talk to some old heads, they go, every 10, 15 years, PE consolidates and it falls apart and it never works and all the things. I think tech is a big reason why it could work. And also, you have this generational mindset, right? Gerald and Sons thing isn't happening as often because kids and a newer generation are going, plumbing, which is wild because it's a great business. You can go be really successful in, but they go, I want to go do a different thing. And so you don't have those people coming, those family businesses lasting as long. I think some of that happens, but we're also seeing what happens when pure financial buyers buy companies and they blow up. Now, just a few weeks ago, there was a bankruptcy. I think there'll be more. And so I think when it comes down to it, efficient uptime and customer service, like we talked, that's still going to be the product. That's the product everyone's interested in. And those that own the simple, meaningful solutions around that will get there. Will we have on-demand service technicians, et cetera, with AI? I think that's an interesting thing for the future. Is there a gig economy around this if AI gets to a perspective where you and I become commercial HVAC technicians overnight because we can just have a really strong conversation with AI to walk us through it? All I wouldn't righty tighty lefty loosey is good enough. That's interesting. How does that shift the dynamics? Does reputation still matter, et cetera? So that's one thing that we're looking at. I also think that wearables, we made the joke. I mean, we stopped selling smart glasses a long time ago. It wasn't ready, and I'm glad we did. We wouldn't be having this conversation if we were still in the hardware game. But the OpenAI, Johnny Ives acquisition of his company, I mean, it's fascinating. I think that's going to come back fast because it just makes sense. You want people to be safe on job sites. Hands-free point of view matters. And there's a lot of ways to deliver that nowadays. So I think those are really interesting trends as we think about where wearables take us, robotics, et cetera. My bold prediction, I tell my family around a campfire when I talk, I said, by the end of our lives, we will have ubiquitous robots in our homes to do stuff for us, I think. No question, right? Why wouldn't you? And I mean, I like mowing the yard, but I'm not a big fan of folding laundry and doing dishes. I don't think many people are, right? Why wouldn't I have $1,000 robot who could do all that for me? Senior health. Like you think about so many ways that change. So I do think that there is some massive shifts, and I think it changes dramatically. Like I have kids, I know you do as well. Like, what do you tell them to do? Like data science, AI, robotics, like clearly those things are going to disrupt every industry.
Right. It's funny. Like you talk about kids. When my kids were on their iPads, not that long ago, my kids are young, but I was like, don't be on your iPad that long. But then if you think about it, that's the future. I mean, if they're comfortable with computers and technology and an iPad, and my God, like what they do on an iPad, it's unbelievable. Like things that I'm like, wait, how'd you do this again?
Yeah.
But that, is just how you have to grow up these days. And, Jetsons might not be that far off, what was the robot's name? Was it Rosie? I don't remember.
Yeah,
but,
I think so. Yeah, good callback. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that far off.
That's right.
That far off. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, which is wild to think about.
Yeah. So, as we wrap up, Aaron, as you look at the future and as you look at, where XOi is headed, can you share a little bit about what can we expect from XOi in the next 12 to 18 months? What do we have to look forward to?
Yeah, massive releases around innovation that are moving faster than they ever have. Much of the world for frontline workers and office workers will be conversational, almost exclusively, because it's a natural pattern of how you seek for information. And so I think that unlocks all sorts of different, pretty amazing user experiences. Our big vision is to be ubiquitous on every mechanical, electrical, plumbing job site on the globe. whether that's in the foreground or the background. And so if you think about the Kelley Blue Book of Carfax of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, it's the source of information that's trusted, data rich, and can be leveraged in any context, whether we're the app they're using or we're empowering the app that they're using. We want to earn the opportunity to do that because we think we have a really awesome opportunity to really solve skilled trades, customer experience, all the things we talked about in a meaningful way. So I would expect in the next couple of quarters some massive announcements from us in terms of new product launches and things that we're doing that really accelerate that, different and ahead of everything else that's in the market right now. So
there you go. Well, congratulations on the impact you're making, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you, Seth, for the opportunity to chat. Really enjoyed it.
No, of course. For folks in our audience who want to learn more about XOi or connect with you, where can they find you?
XOi.io is a great place to start. LinkedIn, which is the only social media that I have. So you can find me there too.
There you go. There you go. Well, with that, Aaron, thanks so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. And for all those in our audience, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll see you on the next episode of Elevating Brick and Mortar. Well, that was Aaron Salow, CEO and founder of XOi Technologies. Aaron and I talked about the impact of the skilled trades on the world we live in. The skilled trades have often been underappreciated and underserved, but not anymore. Today, this talent is a depleting resource, and folks are paying attention. And while there's a lot to be done to fix the skilled trades gap, technology can help us maximize and leverage this amazing talent. When done right, and without adding more friction, technology can be a huge competitive advantage to service providers and techs and can help them deliver great services and experiences while becoming highly efficient. And with the rapid advancements in AI, it'll be very interesting to watch how our industry evolves. But evolve it will. There's no question about it. All we have to do is embrace it. Well, with that, I'm your host, Sid Shetty, and I'll see you on the next episode of Elevating Brick and Mortar.
Operations and facilities teams across industries rely on ServiceChannel to ensure that their locations provide the best possible guest experience. Keep customers coming back by lowering downtime and raising your brand standards. Visit ServiceChannel.com to learn more.